he's not only mistaken on the facts, what President Putin is beginning to show absolutely clearly, he doesn't understand imperialism. He really doesn't.
We should be willing to have vibrant debates, respectful, vibrant debates, and goodwill, rather than just continuously repeat uncritical narratives about, the governments that are providing the most resistance to Western hegemony. In the alternative media, there is an enormous reluctance to criticize the governments, the governments that are principally providing meaningful opposition to Western hegemony: China, Russia, and Iran.
And Putin was convinced that Islamist extremism in West Asia is actually a battle between Jewish capital and Muslim capital. Are people in the independent media actually understanding imperialism more than these world leaders that are dealing with America? Is it that they live in a bubble or something?
I'm not sure whether Vladimir Putin understands imperialism.
Good day, everyone. I am here again with brother Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri and me are again going to rant, but let's see if we are keeping it a bit more nuanced and professional today. Well, that's what we always do, so I should not say that. But welcome back, brother.
Thank you, Karim. Great pleasure to be with you as always.
So, Dimitri, I saw today your show with John Helmer, and I'm always a big fan of these shows between you and John Helmer, even though I've seen a lot of people being really, really outraged and annoyed by John Helmer in comment sections and everything. And I think that's because he lays it out there, man. He's not mincing his words, and he is saying, in my opinion, some real big... He's saying some real big truths, in my opinion. That's the feeling I have. He is not the triumphalist that you often see in the anti-imperialist sphere, all the hallelujah stuff. And he actually goes more critical and nuanced, but not in an unfair way. And today I saw your discussion with him about Vladimir Putin and about he said something really, really interesting, and I actually quoted it and emailed it to Sister Vanessa and Fiorella. He said, we have to, what did he say again? He said, we have to come to the conclusion that Putin doesn't understand imperialism. He really doesn't. He said it so serious and convincing. And I was like, you know what I thought at that moment, Dimitri? I think this is a problem of a lot of world leaders around the world who are dealing with the United States. And because I'm sometimes thinking, what are they doing? Are people in the independent media actually understanding imperialism more than these world leaders that are dealing with America? Is it that they live in a bubble or something? You know what I mean? And I'm thinking about China. I'm thinking about even Iran. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I don't necessarily agree with everything that John Helmer says, but that's true of all of my guests. I don't invite people onto my program because I want them to repeat things that I already believe. I think John Helmer provides a very important perspective, a man who has immense experience in Russia and who has had the courage to adopt a skeptical point of view, while at the same time...
Brother, can you stop the notifications in some way, maybe the audio or something, because it's very loud. Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, I just exited the program. It was what's up, and for some reason, okay, hopefully that'll stop now. I completely exited the program. So, anyways, um, so John Helmer has immense experience with Russia. He has far more experience than uh, probably 90% of the commentators in the alternative media who spend a lot of time talking about Russia. And he's a principled man. He's committed to the truth. He's an excellent journalist. He's very meticulous, and his voice deserves to be heard. And he is completely correct in saying that in the alternative media, there is an enormous reluctance to criticize the governments, the governments that are principally providing meaningful opposition to Western hegemony: China, Russia, and Iran. That is true. There's a lot of reluctance in the alternative media. And when I invite people like John Helmer onto my program, I agree with a great deal that John says, but I don't necessarily agree with everything he says. I'm not sure whether Vladimir Putin understands imperialism. He might, but I'm going to come back to that in a second. The preliminary point I want to make is that we are here to educate people, and to do that, we need to educate ourselves. We should be willing to have vibrant debates, respectful, vibrant debates, and goodwill, rather than just continuously repeat uncritical narratives about, the governments that are providing the most resistance to Western hegemony. We're here to try to
The Holy
help.
Trinity.
The Holy Trinity, yes, absolutely. So, look, and I'll say straight up, I have far more respect than the government. And this is going to be very controversial in the West. I have far more respect for the governments of China, Iran, and Russia than I do for any major Western government. That doesn't mean they're perfect. That doesn't mean they don't deserve to be criticized. But compared to the very low bar that the governments of the West have set, they merit our respect. With that on the question, let me turn to the question of whether Vladimir Putin understands Western imperialism. My own view is that Vladimir Putin is a very exceptionally intelligent man. I do think that he is genuinely concerned with and prioritizes the national interests of Russia. He wants to protect Russia. He wants Russia to be strong, but that doesn't mean that he's a saint, okay? And one of the things I think we should bear in mind when we talk about Vladimir Putin is that he's spent an enormous amount of his life cloistered in the Kremlin. He spent virtually no time in the West. Has he ever spent any meaningful time in the West? I can't think of it. I know that he served in the KGB in East Germany, and that was probably a very important formative phase of his life. But has he actually spent meaningful time living in the West and dealing directly with the governments of the West on a day-to-day basis, seeing how they behave? So I would, what I find sort of appealing about John Helmer's view that Vladimir Putin doesn't understand fully Western imperialism is that I think he's kind of living in a bubble, as all of these leaders to some degree are, the leaders of Iran and the leaders of China. And maybe they could learn a thing or two from anti-imperialists like us, who actually have spent much of our lives living in the West, criticizing Western government policies, seeing day to day the treachery and perfidy of these people. Maybe we have something to add to their understanding of these governments. And therefore, I think his perspective, Helmer's perspective on this particular issue, is one that absolutely deserves to be heard. I frankly, I'm absolutely flabbergasted, just to give you an example, how any Western government, any non-Western government that is being targeted by the West would continue to add any credence whatsoever to anything that Trump says, and would be willing to deal in particular with his two favorite emissaries, these shysters, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. These two characters are the lowest of the low. They have absolutely no moral compass. They are grifters. All they're concerned about is enriching themselves. They don't understand the non-Western world, not one iota. They're always looking for a way to scam people. They have the blood of innocent Palestinians, Lebanese, and Iranians on their hands. If I were, as I said in my interview with John Helmer, if I were a leader of a non-Western state that was being targeted by the United States government, I would simply refuse to have anything to do with these two characters, just flatly. You want to negotiate with me? You're going to have to take them out of the equation, and anybody like them. We demand that you put in front of us across the table people who actually have some understanding of our region, of our culture, of our history, and have a genuine desire to try to reach some kind of an agreement. That is definitely not Kushner or Witkoff, and yet, they continue to deal with them. I just find that absolutely flabbergasting.
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation I had with Fiorella, Isabel, and Vanessa Beeley. And don't pin me down on it because I don't remember it exactly anymore. I have to revisit that episode. Actually, in multiple episodes they mentioned it, but I don't remember exactly. But Fiorella and or Vanessa told me, and of course Fiorella is somebody who is based in Moscow. Or often based in Moscow. She goes from country to country. And she told me that Putin was caught saying about when they were talking about ISIS or something, or Al-Qaeda, and Putin was convinced that Islamist extremism in West Asia is actually a battle between Jewish capital and Muslim capital. I kid you not. I'll ask it exactly, Fiorella and Vanessa, exactly what he said. But he was literally caught saying that what's going on, with ISIS and extremism is a battle between Jewish capital and Muslim capital. And I remember the show, and I remember saying to Vanessa and Fiorella, I said, if that's the way Putin thinks, then I lose hope that he's gonna defend well against U.S. imperialism. If that's the way you think about how that works, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we could probably say with equal credibility that the war between Russia and the United States is a war between Western capital and Russian capital. I mean, why don't we apply that reasoning to Russia? Look, at the end of the day, Karim, we are living here in the West under regimes of the most extreme depravity imaginable. And no one should attach the slightest weight to any promises that they make. No one should think for one moment that they have an ounce, a shred of human decency in them. These people are capable of anything. And if you're going to enter into any negotiations with them or any kind of a deal with them, the first requirement should be that you oblige them to perform meaningful concessions, to actually implement meaningful concessions before you make any. Never make any concessions to Western governments before they make meaningful concessions first, because that's the only guarantee you have that they're going to implement the agreement. If you don't do that, you're going to get screwed over. And I'm afraid that that's what's happening to Iran.
Yeah, and I also think that it's a kind of, how can you say that? I've been writing about this as well. Like it's the fallacy of the normal mind that is dealing with the psychopath, and you're dealing with absolute unadulterated psychopaths who literally never stop scheming, never stop lying, never stop trying to get rid of you, to destroy you. And you see these good people in Iran, for example, trying to negotiate and thinking like they're probably really convinced that that when they went and destroyed many of the bases of the United States, thinking that this must have really impressed them, because you're a normal human being. You're thinking this is heavy stuff that we have been inflicting. But these guys just do not stop. They do not stop until they really are stopped, until they really feel the pain, as we discussed last time. And they're just not gonna stop scheming ever. And if you think that now you can throw it, like I was discussing this with Elena Xenofontos, Vanessa, and Fiorella. We had a panel, and all of them were convinced that the United States is probably going to try the trick of economic integration of Iran in some way, shape, or form, like they're doing with Venezuela, like they've done with almost all societies in the world that have been defanged. Okay, whether it's Egypt, whether it's even groups such as the PLO. The moment that they were integrated, they have been defanged, and now they're probably going to try to get into the market of Iran and slowly integrate it into the U.S. capitalist system, and it will be Saudi Arabia-fied. That's what I'm afraid of. And don't get me wrong, you have a lot of revolutionary sentiments in Iran, so I hope these sentiments still stay very strong. But you also have a very strong liberal undercurrent, and you even have these people in China, and these are a force to reckon with. These guys, they really want their society to become part of the neoliberal, so-called free market world of Western capitalist imperialism. Is very scary stuff.
Yeah, but I think Iran is in a. I completely share their concern, but Iran is not like these other cases that you mentioned. So, for example, Egypt or Venezuela. Iran actually has delivered, for the time being, and I stress for the time being, a stunning military defeat upon Israel and the United States. And if you don't believe me, just look at the polls in Israel. Hebrew University just did a poll in Israel which showed that 92%, I repeat, 92% of Israelis believe that Iran emerged as the winner in that war. I don't know a time in my lifetime, in fact, in the entire history of Israel, where there's been near unanimity in Israel amongst the Israeli population that they lost a major war. So I think that my guess is that the United States has not yet opted for Plan B. I think they still remain bent on the destruction of Iran. They view Iran as being far too independent, far too much of a threat, far too invulnerable to complete manipulation by the U.S. elites to content themselves with some sort of economic integration plan. I think they're going to return to a hot war in Iran. They're going to continue to try to stabilize the war on Iran, but I think that Trump is likely to defer that until after the midterms. I think that's his objective. When the midterms are over, if he's in a position to restart the hot war, he will. And it may begin before then for reasons we can get into with Ali. So I think Iran is a different case from those other cases. And what they are going to try to do in the interim is they're going to try to exacerbate and create divisions within Iran itself between those who think that you can actually seriously negotiate with these child murdering psychopaths and those who understand that that's simply not possible. And for the time being, I think that they're having some success in that regard.
Yeah, and the Iranians could have done that back to the United States, that internal division. If you would have shut down the Strait of Hormuz a bit longer, you would have seen that internal division finally come home. I kid you not. Because people would not be able to pay their food anymore and their cars, the gas for their car and everything. And the United States won't think twice to just make your country suffer and all the people in it. But then somehow there is this normal how can you say that, psychology that deals with the psychopath, and the fact that they are so lenient on the Strait of Hormuz shows to me that there is also a psychological component going on here. These are human beings, okay? These are people who don't want to hurt and starve the rest of the world. I genuinely think that this also plays a role. While the United States, they couldn't care less if 50% of the world population would starve. I kid you not, these people are absolutely depraved. And in this case, I am afraid that I agree with your sentiment when I saw you talking to John Helmer. And also John Helmer, by the way, who said that the electorate in the United States is hardly even aware of everything that's going on in West Asia. And that was confronting when he said that. Like, there is just so little pain coming from the war in West Asia that most of the people in the United States don't even know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they it's not even part of their motivation to vote or not to vote. And when Helmer said, but Iran could have changed that by closing the Strait of Hormuz a bit longer, that everybody was forced to understand that you are now suffering because the United States, your country, is hurting a country at the other side of the world. What do you think, Dimitri?
Well, I do think that the Iranian government cares about the suffering they will inflict on innocent people if they retain the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. I think that probably was a factor in their consideration. They were probably hearing from governments in the global south that have been sympathetic to Iran and who were very concerned about this. I'm sure they had a lot of entreaties from those governments, and they should be concerned. They absolutely should be concerned. But let us consider the alternative. The alternative is that the United States obtains complete hegemony over this critically important region and then uses it, the U.S. elite, not the American people, but the U.S. elite, uses its control over this region to effectively impose its will by whatever brutal means and inhumane means its imagination can conjure. That would be a worse outcome. I think that really the priority of Iran, Russia, and China right now should be to defeat the empire. That should be their priority. Of course, they should make every effort to minimize human suffering in the course of doing that. But the alternative, which is a return to U.S. hegemony, especially under people like Trump, and make no mistake, at this stage, even if Trump will obviously one day cease to be the president of the United States, he has lowered the bar, and whoever follows him will perpetuate his policies and possibly be even worse than Donald Trump. The same is also true of Israel, by the way. If they get rid of Netanyahu, they could end up with somebody who's going to be worse than Netanyahu, and that person will certainly be no better than Netanyahu. What our priority should be right now, all people of conscience around the world, is to defeat this monster. That has to be our priority. Now, if I were, able to sort of plot out a plan for how to do that, what I would say, and I consider myself a man of peace, but I'm also a realist looking at the situation we confront. What I would say is that Iran should shut down completely the Strait of Hormuz until certain minimum requirements are met. One of them is end the genocide in Palestine, withdraw Israeli troops from Lebanon, give us our unfrozen assets, and only then will we reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Until then, it's remaining shut. That's the first thing. The second thing is, again, I say this as a person, I consider myself to be fundamentally committed to peace, but I'm also a realist. I would say to the Russians, you need to make some NATO country in Europe pay for what they're doing to your country. You need to stop being so tolerant of their constant brutal escalations against your country. It's just going to continue. And I would also say to the Chinese, now is the time for you to seize Taiwan. I would say to the Chinese, you need to, I wouldn't invade Taiwan, I would impose a blockade on Taiwan. Let through humanitarian goods, but stop any military goods from coming into the country. shut down the country's semiconductor industry, upon which it depends so dearly and the West depends so dearly, and tell the Taiwanese government that if you do not allow the People's Liberation Army to establish a permanent military presence on Taiwan, we will continue this blockade, subject to the exception that humanitarian goods should go through. Why would I say that? Because right now the United States is extraordinarily weak. The United States its munitions are very depleted. There is an enormous amount of opposition to the war in Iran in the United States. Its oil inventories are highly depleted. Now is the moment to strike, and they should do it in a coordinated fashion with minimum violence. But this approach that they're taking up until now has not deterred them at all. Has not deterred the U.S. It has not deterred the Western psychopaths like Merz and Macron, and it's not deterred American aggression in Eurasia. So I think they need to get. They need to become more coordinated, more unpredictable, as John said in my interview with him. I think that was excellent advice. Stop being so predictable and be more forceful in asserting your rights.
Static crackles, voices rise. Truth breaks through their velvet lies. A screen of fire, a shield of steel. Bedbeat medium makes you feel. No borders, no change, no silence.